Imagine if the John Wick franchise was an old Western flick. Now imagine if John Wick was fighting in World War II. Well, you don't have to imagine anymore, as today I'm gonna tell you about this year's most underrated movie and a hidden gem in the action genre. The movie we're going to recap today is a brutal action flick set around the Nazis' withdrawal from Finland, in which they adopted a scorched earth tactic and destroyed towns, killed civilians, and burned land to leave nothing behind. One of this movie's biggest inspirations is real-life World War II sharpshooter Simo Häyhä, who single-handedly killed over 500 enemy soldiers while camping out in the snow, masking his muzzle flash by burying himself in snow and not using a scope not to be seen by the enemy from the reflection of the sun. Sisu follows a story timeline similar to 1917, in which there are no breaks in the events, and there is constant stress, pressure, and suffering with the character in which he can't seem to catch a break. Enough about my thoughts, and let us see why this movie is a dark horse. We find ourselves during the final months of World War II in a war-torn Finland. An old man is seen in the middle of nowhere with his horse and dog. He is standing in a lake, searching in the water for something and nitpicking through a pile of what appears to be dirt. We have no idea who this man is or what he is doing. After carefully filtering through the dirt, he finds traces of gold in the water stream. He appears hopeful while looking out into the distance as warplanes fly above him, seemingly ignoring the war surrounding him. The man follows the water trail before setting up camp by an empty piece of land and digging. After days of what seems to be pointless digging, the man finally finds gold. He frantically digs up the surrounding terrain and reveals the length of the gold mine he just stumbled upon. The man breaks down in tears after discovering how much gold there is, and we can see him visibly affected emotionally by this discovery, as if he realized a lifelong dream or aspiration before digging it all up. After the man digs a couple of bags of gold, he fiercely guards the gold in his tent, refusing to sleep for fear of anyone stealing it. The man bears down in celebration and cleans himself in the water, where we can see his body filled with scars, and his face looks hardened, signifying that there is more to this man than meets the eye. He sets up to travel to the city to sell it. While the man is traveling, he crosses paths with a Nazi battalion, where they eye him up, and he tries not to draw any attention to himself or what he's carrying. He discovers that the battalion is holding a group of women captive, but ignores the fact while visibly disgusted. He exchanges looks with only the commander as if he recognizes authority and another alpha. One of the soldiers decides to shoot him, but the Nazi commander stops him, telling him that he's riding to his death anyways. The man passes the town where the Nazis came from, seeing the destruction they set and the hanged bodies they left. Once again, he ignores the gruesome scene in front of him, completely unfazed by it, as opposed to when we saw him break down to his discovery of gold as if he's more familiar with death. After passing through the lifeless town, he runs into a broken-down truck of the same Nazi battalion. Again, he tries not to draw attention and pass them, but these soldiers are looking more arrogant and cocky without their commander around. One of the officers stops him and looks through his belongings, finding the gold he's carrying. The soldiers mock and belittle him, and an order is issued to take all his gold. The man is visibly holding back his rage. His hands are shaking and pressed into a fist, his body's instinct to fight seemingly taking over to deal with the situation. He tries to fight it till he is left with no choice. He whispers to his dog to go and take cover while one of the soldiers is trying to shoot it. The officer is preparing to execute the old man while mocking him and signaling that they'll steal his gold. Suddenly, the old man snaps and starts to brutally kill all the soldiers. He uses his knife skillfully and appears to know what he is doing, using bodies as a shield and attacking strategically to manage to win a fight alone with no guns against 4 armed soldiers with ease. In the end, he breaks the arm of the last soldier before killing him with his own gun. The sound of repeated gunshots reaches the original battalion, and they stop and decide to turn back. They find the bodies of the soldiers, and they find a small piece of gold. They decide to pursue the man, thinking he's nothing but a simple old man with gold, with a plan of killing him and taking his gold for themselves. The man rides his horse away from the tank, firing at him, and he unexpectedly goes into a minefield where they step on a mine. But he is saved by his horse absorbing the blast, which blows up, but the man is passed out in the middle of the minefield. They catch up with the man in an open field, seemingly having the upper hand. The man is disoriented, injured, and outnumbered. He tries to collect the gold that's visibly scattered now, notices several mines close to him and the nearby tank, and comes up with a plan. The battalion watches him as he collects the gold and waits for him to finish. As the soldiers approach him to shoot him, he throws a rock onto the mine in front of them, setting a few off before covering himself with a shield and running away. The field is covered by smoke, and there is barely any visibility. The man manages to disappear in the smoke, and the battalion is stuck in the minefield. The commander orders one of the soldiers to go into the minefield and walk forward. The soldier gets a mine thrown at him by the man and blows up. The officer commands another two to go from the side of the road as they walk the blow-up from the mines. The commander orders his right-hand man to choose two girls and make them walk the minefield, but one of the girls steps up and volunteers to look out for the other girls. The Nazis find the tags that were dropped from him and report it. They are informed that the man's name is Tommy Korpi, a former Finnish commando known for his unmatched skill and brutality. They explain the chilling tale of the commando who became a one-man killing machine after the death of his family, who was set loose on the Russians by himself. With hundreds of kills, the Russians called him the Immortal out of fear. They explained that the man wanted to let go of his blood-filled past and leave the war to live in peace and isolation. They are ordered to regroup with their army, but the commando ignores the order, saying that the Nazis have already lost the war and this gold is their way out. As they make their way through the field, the man is injured from a piece of shrapnel and is resting in between an abandoned truck. He is startled by the noise of the vehicles and wakes up with nowhere to go. He hides behind the truck to wait till they pass him, but the commander sets two dogs loose to sniff him out. Hearing that they set dogs out, he quickly goes under a truck and hangs below it, puncturing the fuel tank to cover himself with diesel to mask his scent. The battalion stops when they realize something is wrong and find diesel on the ground. In the moment of confusion, the man gets up and runs into the open field. Right as they catch him, the man pulls a hoodie, lights a match, and sets himself on fire, making the dogs run away in fear. He jumps into a lake while being fired at, while he sinks himself to the bottom. The commander says that he'll need air eventually, and they wait for him to surface. A few minutes pass, and the man is still below. The commander orders two soldiers to take a boat, go after him, and look for him in the water. One of the soldiers jumps in only to be met and killed by the man waiting for him in a boogeyman-like scene. He pulls another trick and breathes through the oxygen coming out of his stabbed neck. The blood surfaces, and the other soldier panics and attempts to escape, but is shot by the Nazis for desertion. The man escapes to the other side of the lake and runs away. Tommy finds himself in front of a harrowing scene. A town is completely lit up and on fire. He stares at the sight in front of him, visibly emotional by it. He continues his path and arrives at a petrol station. His dog catches up with him, but he sees that a grenade is attached to it. He quickly takes it out and throws it, but the explosion still knocks him out. But the dog is okay, and that's what matters. The battalion catches him, beats him, steals his gold, ties him up, and hangs him. The commander, a soldier, and the right-hand man watch him hang and take their hats off in respect for a man who is incredibly skillful in combat and an accomplished soldier. The commander mockingly places a piece of gold in his pocket. "For your troubles," he says before leaving him to die. After the battalion leaves, Tommy begins struggling on the pole. Somehow still alive, he presses his foot on a nail and stabs his injured leg through a metal rod on the pole to stay up and avoid suffocation. A Nazi plane lands to refuel, causing the pole Tommy to be hanged from to drop. A soldier goes to check his body but finds that he's alive. His officer orders him to shoot the man and the dog, but the man quickly kills him before knocking out the other officer. Tommy falls into desperation, realizing his gold is lost, and buries the gold, but quickly regains hope when he sees the pilot is alive and the plane is running. Tommy proceeds to patch up his wounds and stitches himself with metal wire while screaming in pain and cleanse the wounds with gasoline. The pilot watches in horror as Tommy seems inhuman. He leaves his dog with water, but not food, and forces the pilot to fly his plane to block the road kamikaze style. For the Nazis find and inspect the plane and the body of the pilot tied to the plane, the right-hand man discovers that the rope is the same rope he hanged Tommy with, realizing Tommy is still alive, which shocks and petrifies the soldiers. Even the commander, who is in disbelief, orders them to start moving in fear of this man. Tommy starts taking out the moving trucks one by one. He kills two men in the back of the trucks with the women and hands them their weapons before taking out the driver. With the assistance of the kidnapped women, they stealthily get him on top of the tank without being seen. They square up with another truck filled with men and drive-by shoot them all. Tommy starts hatching at the tank door, and they watch him in fear. The right-hand man is ordered to go up and deal with him. As soon as he opens the door, he is grabbed from the tank and falls off with him, and they engage in a violent fight. The right-hand man holds his own, but eventually, Tommy beats him. The remaining soldiers find the injured Tommy, but all flee in terror when they see that the Immortal is still alive even after he was shot and hanged. Tommy leaves the living right-hand man to the women, takes a bike, and goes after the commander and his soldier, who still have the gold and are the only ones left. The Nazis reach a runway and meet with a Nazi pilot with an old plane, and the commander shoots his remaining soldier. As they begin to fly the plane, Tommy shoots at the plane and drives into it, driving his pickaxe to the bottom of the plane and hanging from it as the plane flies into the air. The pilot is hit and is bleeding out, but the commander tells him the sooner he arrives, the sooner he can get help. The axe slips out, but Atami drives it in again mid-air, luckily stopping right by the wheel and hanging onto it. He slashes at the plane to get inside and is heard by the commander and his pilot, who are both shocked that Atami is below an airborne plane. He makes his way inside the plane and fights the commander. The commander is angry over the fact that this man just doesn't die. They engage in a close, skillful fight, with the commander questioning his inability to die. The commander ties a metal chain to his hand and violently beats Atami with it. Atami is losing because of his weakened state, and it seems like we finally met his match. And right as the commander delivers the killing blow, Atami quickly catches and attaches the metal chain to a bomb and drops the bomb from the plane, sending the commander down with it before he dies from the crash and the explosion of the bomb in one of the most brutal kills in movie history. Atami finds that the pilot has pulled out and is dead, and the plane is crashing. He searches the plane for parachutes, but of course, he doesn't find any. He collects his gold, holds it tight, ties himself steadily to the plane, and braces for impact. The plane crashes into a muddy swamp headfirst, which is guaranteed to kill anyone inside. The women who have tied the right-hand man to the tank and made their way to the closest Finnish base. The soldiers are startled at the sight of a closing German tank and prepare to fire before finding a group of women in control of the tank with a hanging German soldier. They are bewildered at the scene in front of them and are informed that the entire battalion is dead and were killed by one man, the Immortal. Atami comes out of the water and drags himself out of the mud using his axe. He carries his gold and hugs it closely again. Days later, he is on a Nazi bike with his dog. He finds his way into the city, going to the bank and startling the armed guard as a bloodied-up phantom-looking figure has just walked into the bank. Atami stops the whole bank with his appearance and drops his gold on the counter, and for the final moment of the movie, speaks for the very first time to the petrified teller, saying, "Can I have this gold in big bills that aren't so heavy to carry?" And that's it, folks. Here are a few fun facts before we end here. The movie title Sisu is a Finnish term that describes an unbreakable stoic determination, will, grit, and purpose that defies logic and even death. Sisu received great reviews and ratings. It boasts an impressive 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb, which is very high for its genre. In comparison, John Wick received an average of 7.4 in ratings. In our opinion, the movie had a budget of only 6 million euros and managed to become one of the best and most notable movies of 2023. Sisu is rated R and doesn't shy away from what it is supposed to be, which is a gory, violent massacre with a few over-the-top sequences. The movie is reminiscent of the old Western classics of Clint Eastwood. Sisu does deliver better combat sequences and more realism in its combat aspect with a more logical plotline, and this movie is highly recommended for anyone who grew up watching the original action flicks of the 80s and 90s of Stallone and Schwarzenegger and would love to see them back. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this recap, we publish weekly videos, so please subscribe and don't forget to like the video. I'll see you in the next one.